Daniel Pierce had been hauling cargo for 12 years, and he thought he had seen everything the frontier colonies could throw at him. He was wrong. The sky over Kessler 7 turned red that morning. Not the natural red of a mining world's dust-filled atmosphere, but the angry crimson of energy weapons tearing through space. Daniel stood outside his cargo hauler, watching massive ships exchange fire high above the industrial district. The larger vessels were unlike anything in human design. They looked organic, almost alive, with scales that gleamed like metal and wings that burned with internal fire. The Drakon Empire. Daniel had heard stories about them his whole life. Ancient, powerful, and completely uninterested in humanity. They had been traveling the stars for 10,000 years while humans were still figuring out fire. Now their ships filled the sky above Kessler 7, fighting something Daniel couldn't quite see. All personnel, begin immediate evacuation, the station's emergency system blared. This is not a drill. Proceed to designated shelters immediately. Daniel grabbed his datapad and ran toward his hauler. He needed to secure his cargo and get to the shelters like everyone else. But halfway across the landing pad, something screamed through the atmosphere above him. A small craft, trailing fire and smoke, spinning out of control. It had the same scaled appearance as the larger Draken ships. The escape pod crashed 3 blocks away. The impact shook the ground beneath Daniel's feet and sent a column of black smoke into the red sky. Around him, other workers were running toward the shelters. No one was heading toward the crash site. Daniel should have followed them. Every survival instinct he had told him to run the other way. But something made him change direction. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else. He ran toward the smoke. The pod had torn through the side of an old storage facility. Debris covered the street. Small fires burned in pools of fuel. Daniel climbed over twisted metal and broken concrete, following the trail of destruction. The pod itself had embedded in the facility's wall, its hull cracked open like an egg. Inside, Daniel heard a sound that made his chest tight. A child crying. He pulled himself up to the broken hull and looked inside. The interior was barely lit, filled with smoke and the smell of burning plastic. In the center, strapped into a crash seat that was far too large, was a small figure. At first glance, Daniel thought it was wearing armor. Then he realized those were scales. Pale silver scales that covered a body no bigger than a human 6-year-old, a Drakon child. Her face was reptilian but still recognizable as young. Afraid. Blood ran down one side of her head, dark purple against the silver scales. She was trapped under a piece of the pod's ceiling that had collapsed during the crash. "Hey," Daniel said softly, though he had no idea if she could understand him. "Hey. It's okay." The child's eyes found him. They were gold, bright even in the smoke-filled darkness. She said something in a language that sounded like wind and fire combined. Daniel didn't need a translator to know she was asking for help. He climbed into the pod. The metal was hot, burning his hands through his work gloves. The debris pinning the child was heavy, some kind of support beam made of material that felt like metal but bent like plastic. Daniel got his hands under it and lifted. His muscles screamed. The beam shifted slightly. Then a bit more. "Come on," he growled, putting everything he had into the lift. The beam rose high enough. "Move, kid. Move now." The child understood. She unbuckled herself and scrambled out from under the debris. The moment she was clear, Daniel let the beam drop. It hit the floor with a sound like thunder. An explosion rocked the storage facility. Secondary fires were spreading. The whole place was about to come down. Daniel scooped up the child without thinking. She was lighter than he expected, but solid. Her scales hard against his arms. She wrapped small clawed hands around his neck and buried her face against his shoulder. Daniel ran. He jumped from the pod's wreckage and hit the ground hard, keeping the child protected against his chest. Behind him, the storage facility groaned. He ran faster, his lungs burning, his legs pumping. He made it to the street just as the building collapsed in a roar of dust and flame. He kept running until he was 2 blocks away. Only then did he slow down, gasping for air. The child in his arms was shaking, still crying softly. Daniel found a spot against a wall and sank down, holding her. "You're okay," he said between breaths. "You're safe now." That was when it happened. Heat flooded through Daniel's body, starting from where the child pressed against him and spreading outward. It felt like fire in his veins. But it didn't hurt. It felt right. Like something clicking into place that had always been missing. Daniel looked down at his arms. Glowing marks appeared on his skin, visible even through his sleeves. They were symbols, writing in a language he had never seen but somehow recognized. The marks burned with orange and gold light. Like embers just pulled from a fire, the child pulled back slightly and looked at his arms. Her gold eyes went wide. She touched one of the glowing symbols with a small clawed finger, then looked up at his face. She spoke a single word in her language, soft and full of wonder. Daniel had no idea what she said, but the word felt important, heavy, like it carried weight beyond its sound. More explosions lit up the sky. The battle was getting worse. Daniel pushed himself to his feet, still holding the child. He needed to get to the emergency shelters. The nearest one was 4 blocks away. In the colony's main hub, he ran again, the child clinging to him. The glowing marks on his arms cast strange shadows as he moved through the smoke-filled streets. Other colonists ran past him, their eyes widening when they saw what he carried. One man actually stopped in his tracks. "Is that a Drakon?" the man shouted. Daniel didn't answer. He kept running. The emergency shelter entrance was crowded with people trying to get inside. Daniel pushed through the crowd, the child held tight against him. When he reached the door, a security officer stepped in front of him. "Stop right there," the officer said. His name tag read, Martinez. He was staring at the child in Daniel's arms. "You can't bring that thing in here. She's hurt," Daniel said. "She's just a kid." "That's a Drakon," Martinez said. "We don't know whose side they're on. We don't know if they're even on our side." A crowd was forming behind them. People were staring, some scared, some angry. Daniel heard muttering, words like dangerous and alien and not our problem. "Look at her," Daniel said, turning so they could see the child's face. Blood still ran down her scales. She was crying again, scared by all the hostile faces. "Does she look dangerous to you?" "She's terrified. The Drakon have never helped us," a woman in the crowd shouted. "Why should we help them?" "Because she's a child," Daniel shot back. "Because it's the right thing to do." Martinez put a hand on his weapon. "I can't let you bring it inside. Security protocol. No unknown aliens during an emergency situation." Daniel felt heat building in his chest again. The marks on his arms grew brighter. He was about to say something he would probably regret when a shadow fell over them all. Everyone looked up. A ship was descending from the burning sky, moving far too fast for a normal landing. It was Drakon, medium-sized, covered in those strange scales that looked like armor. The ship set down in the street 50 feet away, its landing almost delicate despite the speed. A hatch opened in the ship's side. Warriors emerged, wearing actual armor that glowed with the same internal fire as the ship. They were tall, easily 7 feet, with scales and shades of red and gold. Each carried weapons that hummed with energy. The lead warrior's eyes locked onto Daniel. Or more specifically, onto the child in his arms, and the glowing marks on Daniel's skin. The warrior stopped dead, his eyes going wide behind his helmet. He said something in the Drakon language, his voice full of shock. The other warriors froze. They all stared at Daniel now, and there was something in their eyes he didn't expect. Not anger or suspicion, something closer to awe, maybe even fear. The lead warrior approached slowly, like Daniel was something dangerous. He reached out carefully and took the child from Daniel's arms. The little girl went willingly, crying harder now, speaking rapidly in her language. She kept pointing back at Daniel. The warrior looked at Daniel's glowing arms again. He spoke, his voice deep and resonant. Daniel didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. Respect. Question. Wonder. I don't speak your language, Daniel said. The warrior touched something on his armor. When he spoke again, a device translated his words into accented but clear English. You saved the child. You bear the marks. How is this possible? I don't know what you're talking about, Daniel said. She was hurt. I helped her. That's all. The warrior shook his head slowly. That is not all. Come with us. We must speak with the council. They must see this. See what? Daniel asked. The warrior gestured to Daniel's arms, where the marks still glowed. The return of the Flameheart. Before Daniel could ask what that meant, the warrior turned and walked back to the ship, carrying the child. 2 other warriors took positions on either side of Daniel, not threatening but clearly not giving him a choice. Daniel looked back at the crowd of colonists. Martinez and the others stared at him like he had grown a second head. Daniel walked toward the Draken ship. The glowing marks on his arms pulsed with each step. Above them, the battle still raged in the red sky, and Daniel Pierce, cargo hauler from Earth, had absolutely no idea what he had just gotten himself into. The inside of the Draken ship looked like someone had carved it from a single piece of stone and then set it on fire. The walls glowed with soft orange light. The floor felt warm under Daniel's boots. Everything curved in ways that seemed both natural and impossible at the same time. The warriors led him to a medical bay where the child lay on a table that adjusted itself to her small size. A Drakan, in different armor, probably a medic, worked on her injuries with tools that hummed and glowed. The child kept looking over at Daniel, her gold eyes tracking him even as the medic cleaned the blood from her scales. Sit, the lead warrior said, pointing to a bench along the wall. We travel now. Travel where? Daniel asked. Home. Daniel felt the ship lift off. There was no sound, no vibration, just a slight pressure that told him they were moving fast. Through a viewport, he watched Kessler 7 fall away below them. The battle still raged in orbit, but the Draken ship slipped through it like water, too fast for the enemy to target. The lead warrior removed his helmet. His face was angular, covered in red scales that darkened to almost black around his eyes. 2 horns curved back from his head. When he looked at Daniel, there was intelligence in those eyes, and something else. Respect, maybe. I am Commander Velroth, the warrior said through his translator. The child you saved is my daughter, Lysizara. Daniel blinked. Your daughter? Yes. Her transport was attacked. The crew put her in the escape pod before the ship was destroyed. Velroth's voice was steady, but Daniel could hear the emotion beneath it. You saved her life. For that, you have my gratitude. Anyone would have done the same, Daniel said. No. Velroth sat down across from him. Not anyone. Not even all Drakan would risk themselves for an unknown child. But that is not what troubles me. He gestured to Daniel's arms. The marks were still there, still glowing, though fainter now. Those marks. Do you know what they mean? No. Velroth was quiet for a long moment. 10,000 years ago, my people faced extinction. An enemy from beyond the void nearly destroyed us. We were young then, barely reaching the stars. We should have died. He paused. But we were saved. Beings came from another world, beings who could bond with our kind. They became known as Flamehearts, warriors who could channel our fire through their own courage. They saved us. What does that have to do with me? Daniel asked. The markings on your arms are the symbols of the Flameheart bond. They have not been seen in 10,000 years, since the Flamehearts vanished after the war. Daniel looked down at his arms. The symbols were beautiful in a strange way, flowing across his skin like living fire. I don't understand. I'm just a cargo hauler. I'm not a warrior. The bond does not care what you are, Velroth said. It cares what you do. You risked your life for my daughter. You showed courage and selflessness. The old magic recognized that. Before Daniel could respond, another Draken entered the medical bay. This one was older, his scales dark purple and marked with white lines that Daniel guessed were scars. He wore robes instead of armor, and he moved with the careful steps of someone who had seen many years. "This is Priest Kael'van," Velroth said, standing. "He is a keeper of the old ways." Kael'van approached Daniel slowly. His eyes were completely white, and Daniel realized he was blind. But when those white eyes turned toward him, Daniel felt like the priest could see straight through him. "May I?" Kael'van asked, holding out a clawed hand. Daniel wasn't sure what he was agreeing to, but he nodded. Kael'van placed his hand on Daniel's arm, over one of the glowing marks. The priest inhaled sharply. "It is true," Kael'van said softly. "The bond is real. Weak still, newly formed, but real." He pulled his hand back. "Commander, we must take him to the homeworld. The council must see this." "I was planning to," Velroth said. "Wait," Daniel said. "I don't want to go to your homeworld. I want to go home. To Earth." "That is not possible," Kael'van said. "Not yet. You carry something precious. Something that could change everything. The council must decide what this means." Daniel stood up. "I didn't ask for any of this. I just helped a kid. That's all. And in doing so, you awakened something that has slept for 100 centuries," Kael'van said. "Whether you asked for it or not, it is yours now. The bond cannot be broken once formed." A small voice spoke from the medical table. Lysizara was sitting up, the medic still working on her head wound. She spoke in the Draken language, looking directly at Daniel. "What did she say?" Daniel asked. Velroth's expression softened. "She said you have kind fire. That when you held her, she felt safe for the first time since the attack." Daniel felt something tight in his chest. He looked at the little girl with her pale silver scales and gold eyes. She smiled at him, a small, fragile thing. "How long until we reach your homeworld?" Daniel asked quietly. 6 days, Velroth said. Daniel sat back down. "Okay. 6 days. Then we figure this out." The journey to the Drakon homeworld passed in a strange blur. Daniel spent most of his time in a small room they gave him, trying to process everything that had happened. The marks on his arms faded to almost invisible during the first day, but he could still feel them there, like a warmth just beneath his skin. Lysizara visited him often. She was learning English from the ship's computer with the speed that only a child could manage. By the 3rd day, she could speak simple sentences. "You saved me," she said, sitting on the floor of his room while he ate something the ship's kitchen had made that almost tasted like chicken. "I did," Daniel agreed. "Why?" "Because you needed help." She tilted her head, considering this. "Drakon do not help humans. Father says humans are young species. Not important." Daniel felt a spike of irritation but pushed it down. "Do you think humans aren't important?" Lysizara shook her head firmly. "You are important. You have kind fire. You keep saying that. What does it mean?" She struggled with the words. "Inside. You have fire inside that wants to protect. Wants to help. That is kind fire. Not all people have it. Not Draken. Not human. Not any species. Just some people. And you can see that?" Daniel asked. "I feel it. All Draken feel fire. It is how we know each other." She held up her small clawed hand. "Your fire feels different than ours. But it is strong." On the 5th day, Kael'van came to his room. The old priest moved slowly, using a staff that glowed at the top with contained flame. "The council knows you are coming," Kael'van said. "There is much debate. Many do not believe a human could be a flameheart. They think it is a trick or a mistake." "Maybe they're right," Daniel said. "Maybe this is all a mistake." Kael'van shook his head. "The marks do not lie. The bond is real. But I must warn you. When we arrive, the council will test you. They will want proof." "What kind of test?" "The trial of embers. A Draken coming of age must walk through sacred fire to prove their connection to our element. If you are truly bonded, the flames will not harm you. If you are not, Cale Vaughn left the sentence unfinished. And if I refuse the test? Daniel asked. Then they will assume the bond is false. They will send you home and forget this ever happened. Cale Vaughn leaned on his staff. But the bond will remain. Untrained. Uncontrolled. It could kill you within a year. The fire inside will grow until your body cannot contain it. Daniel felt cold despite the warm ship. That's not much of a choice. No. Cale Vaughn agreed. But it is the only one you have. On the 6th day, they arrived at the Draken homeworld. Daniel pressed his face against the viewport and stared. The planet looked like a jewel. Red and gold and orange, with clouds that seemed to glow from within. 3 moons hung in orbit, each one carved with massive symbols that were visible from space. The ship descended toward the largest continent. Cities spread across the landscape, but they didn't look like human cities. These were built into mountains and carved from living stone. Towers rose like flames frozen in time. Gardens hung in the air, supported by nothing Daniel could see. They landed in a city that Velroth called Kalthor, the first city. A group of Drakon in ornate robes waited at the landing platform. Behind them stood warriors in armor that made Velroth's look plain. The council, Velroth said quietly. Stay calm. Answer their questions honestly, and do not show fear. I'm terrified, Daniel admitted. Good, Velroth said. So am I. They walked down the ship's ramp. The Draken Council watched Daniel approach with expressions ranging from curiosity to clear suspicion. One of them, a large Drakon with deep red scales and black horns, stepped forward. I am Lord Tharix, voice of the council, he said in perfect English. You are the human who claims to carry the Flameheart bond? I don't claim anything, Daniel said. I helped a kid. Everything else just happened. Tharix's eyes narrowed. Show us the marks. Daniel rolled up his sleeves. The marks were barely visible, just faint lines on his skin. Several council members leaned closer to look. Some made sounds of surprise. Others looked doubtful. This proves nothing, Tharix said. Markings can be faked. The bond is real, Cale Vaughn said firmly. I have examined him myself. You are blind, old priest. You see what you wish to see. I see with more than eyes, Cale Vaughn shot back. Enough, another council member said. She was smaller than the others, her scales a pale gold. There is a simple way to settle this. The trial of embers. If he is truly bonded, he will survive. If not, the matter is closed. Murmurs of agreement ran through the council. Tharix smiled, showing teeth. I agree. Let the human face the trial. Tomorrow, at dawn, Velroth stepped closer to Daniel. You do not have to do this, he said quietly. I can take you back to human space. To your home. Daniel thought about the cargo hauler he would never see again. He thought about his small apartment on Earth, his simple life. He thought about Lysizara and her gold eyes and the way she smiled when she saw him. No, he said. I'll take the test. Tharix's smile widened. Excellent. We will see if human courage is real, or just stories you tell yourselves. As the council dispersed, Lysizara ran forward and grabbed Daniel's hand. You will pass, she said with absolute certainty. I know you will. Daniel looked down at her and hoped she was right. Because tomorrow, he would either prove he carried something ancient and powerful, or he would burn. Dawn on the Draken homeworld was nothing like dawn on Earth. The sun rose red and huge, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. Daniel stood on a balcony in the quarters they had given him and watched it climb. He wondered if this would be the last sunrise he ever saw. Velroth came for him an hour later. The commander wore full ceremonial armor now, polished until it gleamed like fire given solid form. He looked at Daniel with an expression that was hard to read. Are you ready? Velroth asked. No, Daniel said honestly. But I don't think waiting will change that. They walked through the city streets toward the Temple of First Flame. Other Drakons stopped to watch them pass. Word had spread quickly about the human who claimed the Flameheart bond. Some looked curious. Others looked angry. Most just looked skeptical. The temple was older than any human structure Daniel had ever seen. It was carved from a single piece of black stone that seemed to drink in light. Flames burned in bowls along the entrance, but these flames were different colors: blue, green, purple, white. They burned without wood or fuel, fed by something Daniel couldn't identify. Inside, the temple opened into a vast chamber. The council waited there, along with hundreds of other Draken. The crowd filled seats that rose in tiers around a central floor. In the middle of that floor stood a circle made of gold, metal. And inside the circle, flames already burned. Real flames this time, orange and red. Crackling with heat Daniel could feel from 20 feet away. Kael'van stood beside the circle. The old priest looked small next to the fire, but his white eyes seemed to glow in the flame light. "Daniel Pierce of Earth," Kael'van called out, his voice somehow filling the entire chamber. "You stand before the council and the people of the Drakan Empire. You claim the bond of Flameheart. Do you accept the trial of embers to prove this claim?" Daniel's mouth was dry. He looked at the flames burning in the circle. They were hot enough that the air above them rippled and bent, hot enough to kill. "I accept," he said, and his voice didn't shake as much as he thought it would. "Then hear the words of trial," Kael'van continued. "The Flameheart bond is built on courage, on the willingness to stand between danger and those who need protection. It is not given to the strong or the powerful. It is given to those who act when action is needed, who step forward when others step back. The flames will judge your heart. If it is pure, they will not harm you. If it is not, they will consume you." "That doesn't seem very fair," Daniel muttered. Kael'van smiled slightly. "The flames do not care about fair. Only truth." Tharix stood from his seat in the council tiers. "Before the trial begins, I would speak." He looked down at Daniel with cold eyes. "Humans are young. Your species barely understands fire, let alone commands it. The Flameheart bond is sacred to our people. It represents our highest ideals, our deepest connection to the element that defines us. To claim that a human could carry this bond is an insult to 10,000 years of tradition." Murmurs of agreement rose from parts of the crowd. "But," Tharix continued, "I am not without mercy. Human, you may withdraw from this trial. Admit that you were mistaken, that the marks on your arms were chance or coincidence, and we will return you to your people unharmed. No shame will follow you. You acted bravely in saving a child, and that deserves respect. But do not claim what you cannot possess." The offer was tempting. Daniel could walk away right now. Go home. Go back to his simple life hauling cargo across the frontier. Forget about Flamehearts and ancient bonds and all of this madness. Then he saw Lysizara. She sat in the front row with her father, her small form almost lost among the adult Draken. Her gold eyes were locked on him, full of absolute faith. "No," Daniel said clearly. "I'll take the trial." Tharix's expression hardened. "So be it. Your death will teach your people the price of arrogance." "Enough," Velroth snapped. "Let the trial proceed." Kael'van gestured to the circle. "Enter the flames, Daniel Pierce, and may the ancient fire judge you worthy." Daniel walked forward. Each step felt heavier than the last. The heat from the flames hit him like a physical wall. Sweat ran down his face. His skin felt tight, ready to burn. He reached the edge of the circle and stopped. The flames rose higher, as if sensing him. They roared and crackled. Hungry. Daniel could feel their heat through his clothes, through his skin. This was insane. No one could walk through this and survive. But then he felt something else. A warmth that didn't come from outside. It started in his chest, right where Lysizara had pressed against him when he carried her from the crashed pod. The warmth spread outward, flowing through his body like liquid heat. The marks on his arms began to glow, faint at first, then brighter. Daniel took a breath and stepped into the flames. The fire surrounded him instantly. It roared in his ears, blocked out the temple, blocked out everything except heat and light. He should have been screaming. He should have been dying, but the flames didn't burn. They touched his skin, and it felt like coming home, like something that had always been missing, clicking into place. He walked forward, deeper into the circle. The flames rose around him, forming a pillar of fire that reached the temple ceiling. Through the orange light, he could barely see the shocked faces of the watching Drakon. He raised his arms, and the marks blazed like stars, the ancient symbols burning with power that had slept for 10,000 years. The fire responded to him. It moved with his movements, swirled around his body like it was dancing. Daniel felt it flowing through him, not consuming but joining. His blood felt like molten metal. His breath came out as sparks. But it didn't hurt. It felt right. He stood in the center of the circle, in the heart of the flames, and he was not afraid. Slowly, the fire began to die down. It drew back from him, retreating to the edges of the circle, shrinking until only normal flames remained. Daniel stood untouched. His clothes weren't even singed. The marks on his arms still glowed, brighter than ever. The temple was completely silent. Every Drakon stared at him with wide eyes. Even Tharix looked shocked, his mouth slightly open. Kael'van broke the silence. The flames have judged. They have found him worthy. The old priest turned to the council. For the first time in 10,000 years, a flameheart walks among us. The silence broke. Voices erupted across the temple. Some in wonder, some in anger, some in fear. Arguments started immediately. Daniel just stood there, still feeling the warmth in his chest, still feeling the fire moving through his veins. Lysizara broke free from her father and ran to him. She stopped at the edge of the circle, hesitant to enter. Daniel stepped out, and she threw her arms around him, her small body shaking. "I knew it," she said in his ear. "I knew you had kind fire." Velroth approached more slowly. He looked at Daniel with new eyes, like he was seeing something completely different than the cargo hauler he had brought aboard his ship. "The trial is complete. The council must now decide what this means." "What it means is that our traditions have been violated," Tharix said, pushing through the crowd. "A human cannot be a flameheart. The flames were tricked somehow. This is not real." "The flames cannot be tricked," Kael'van said firmly. "You know this, Lord Tharix. The trial of embers is absolute. Then the trial itself is flawed," Tharix snapped. He looked at Daniel with pure anger. "You are not welcome here, human. You are an insult to everything we hold sacred." "That's enough," Velroth said. "The council will debate this properly, not in anger." The council members began filing out, their voices raised in argument. The crowd followed, still talking, still shocked. Daniel stood with Lysizara holding his hand, feeling the marks on his arms slowly fade back to invisible lines. Kael'van approached them. "You did well. Better than I expected." "What happens now?" Daniel asked. "Now the real challenge begins. You have proven the bond is real. But many will still resist. They will try to find ways to dismiss you, to send you away. You must be ready for this." "I don't want to fight anyone," Daniel said. "I just want to understand what's happening to me." "Then you must learn," Kael'van said. "I will teach you. The ways of the Flameheart. The control you will need. The history you should know. But this will take time." "How much time?" "Years, if we had them. But I suspect we do not." Kael'van looked troubled. "The enemy that attacked Kessler 7. They are the reason the Flamehearts existed in the first place. The Shkal swarm. We thought them destroyed 10,000 years ago. But they have returned." Daniel felt cold despite the warmth still in his chest. "What does that mean?" "It means the universe has a sense of timing. The swarm returns, and a Flameheart appears. This is not coincidence." Kael'van put a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "The flames chose you for a reason. I think we will learn that reason soon enough." The next weeks passed in a blur. Daniel began training with Kael'van every day. The old priest taught him to feel the fire inside him, to control it, without letting it control him. It was harder than anything Daniel had ever done. The fire wanted to be free, wanted to burn, Learning to hold it back was like trying to grab smoke, but slowly, he improved. He learned to make his hands glow with heat without burning. He learned to sense temperature changes around him. He learned to see in the dark by feeling the warmth of living things. Drakmir, the weapons master, was less patient than Kael'van. He was an old warrior with scars covering half his face. And he made it clear, he thought training a human was a waste of time. Again, Drakmir would bark as Daniel tried to channel fire into a practice weapon. Faster. A Drakenchild could do better. Daniel gritted his teeth and tried again. The practice sword in his hands began to glow, heat spreading along its length. He swung at the target dummy. The blade cut through and left a burning line across the practice armor. Better, Drakmir admitted grudgingly. But still slow. In real combat, you would be dead 3 times over. I've been training for 3 weeks, Daniel said. How long do Drakan train? 50 years before they are considered competent. You have considerably less time. Quote, between training sessions, Daniel spent time with Lysizara. She was his only real friend on this world. She taught him the Draken language, and he taught her more English. She told him stories about Draken history, and he told her about Earth. Do humans have cities in the sky? She asked one day as they sat in a garden that floated above the city. No, we build on the ground. That sounds sad. How do you see the stars? We look up. She considered this. I suppose that works too. One evening, a month after his arrival, Velroth came to find Daniel in the training hall. The commander looked troubled. News from the frontier, Velroth said. The swarm has taken 3 more colonies. Drakon colonies. Our fleet is holding them back, but barely. Losses are heavy. Daniel put down the practice weapon he had been working with. I'm sorry. The council meets tonight to discuss strategy. Some want to pull back our forces, defend only the core worlds. Others want to strike at the swarm directly. Velroth paused. There is another option. One that involves you. What option? Come to the council chamber. You should hear this yourself. Daniel followed Velroth through the palace to the council chamber. The room was circular, with seats rising in tiers. The council members sat in their places, and for the first time, Daniel was invited to stand in the center. Kael'van stood beside him. The time has come to reveal a secret, something the council has kept hidden for 10,000 years. A section of the floor slid open. A platform rose, carrying something that made Daniel's breath catch. It was a weapon, or maybe a piece of technology. It looked like a massive crystal formation, but it pulsed with internal light. Symbols covered its surface, the same symbols that marked Daniel's arms. This is the Eternal Forge, Kael'van said. Built during the First Swarm War. When a Flameheart channels their power through it, the forge can purge swarm corruption across entire star systems. It saved our people once. It could do so again. Then use it, Daniel said. We cannot. The forge requires a Flameheart to activate. For 10,000 years, it has sat silent. Until now. Kael'van looked at Daniel. You are the key. The question is whether you are willing to turn. Daniel looked at the pulsing crystal, at the ancient power it contained. What's the cost? The truth, Kael'van said. We do not know. The last Flameheart to use it survived, but was never the same. The strain could kill you, or it could simply burn away parts of who you are, or it could save millions of lives, Daniel said quietly. Perhaps, Tharek said from his seat. Or perhaps it will fail, and we will have wasted our only hope on a human who cannot handle the power. There is another option, Velroth said. We bring in human forces. Form an alliance. Fight the swarm together. The council chamber erupted in argument. Many voices rose against the idea. Working with humans. Asking for help from a species they considered primitive. It was unthinkable for some of them. Daniel listened to them argue and felt the fire warm in his chest. He had a choice to make. Risk everything on the forge, or try to bridge the gap between species and fight together. He looked at Lysizara, watching from the gallery with worried eyes. He thought about the cargo hauler who had saved a child without thinking. About the simple person he had been before all this started. "I have an idea," Daniel said. The council fell silent, looking at him. "What if we do both?" The council stared at Daniel like he had spoken nonsense. Tharix was the first to find his voice. "Both? You propose we rely on human forces and risk the forge? That is not strategy. That is desperation." "No," Daniel said, feeling the fire warm his words. "You need more ships, more people, more tactics they haven't seen before. Humans can give you that, and while we hold them off together, I can reach the forge and activate it. We hit them from two sides." Velroth leaned forward in his seat. "The Eternal Forge is deep in sacred territory. On the moon, Caldris. The swarm is between us and that moon. Even if we agreed to this plan, getting you there would require punching through their entire fleet. That's where the human ships come in," Daniel said. "We're good at punching through things we shouldn't be able to punch through. It's kind of what we do." Lest, a council member Daniel didn't know, spoke up. Her scales were pale blue, and she looked thoughtful rather than angry. "Even if we agreed, why would humanity help us? We have never helped them. We have barely acknowledged their existence." "Because the swarm won't stop with Drakan worlds," Daniel said. "Once they're done with you, they'll head straight for human space. We're next on the menu. So, this isn't about helping you. It's about survival for both of us." Kael'van nodded slowly. "The human speaks truth. The swarm consumes all in its path. They will not spare anyone. I still say this is madness," Tharix said. "We do not need human help. We are Drakan. We have conquered the stars for 10,000 years, and right now you're losing," Daniel said bluntly. "I'm not saying Drakan aren't powerful. But pride won't stop the swarm. Working together might." The council erupted in argument again. Daniel stood in the center and waited. He could feel the fire inside him responding to his emotions, wanting to burst out. He forced it down, kept it controlled like Kael'van had taught him. Finally, Velroth stood. The chamber fell silent. "I propose we vote. All in favor of contacting human military forces and offering alliance against the swarm." Hands rose across the council. Daniel counted. 11 in favor, 8 against. It was close, but it was enough. Velroth looked at Tharix. "The council has spoken. We will reach out to humanity." Tharix's expression was cold fury. "You will regret this, all of you." He stood and walked out of the chamber. After the council session ended, Velroth took Daniel to a communications center. The technology there was beyond anything Daniel had seen. Even on Draken ships, screens showed star maps with hundreds of fleet positions. Officers worked at stations that responded to thought as much as touch. "We need someone to speak for humanity," Velroth said. "Someone in a position of authority who will listen." "Try Admiral Lisa Grant," Daniel said. "She commands the Frontier Defense Fleet. If anyone will understand the threat, it's her." It took 2 hours to establish a connection. When Admiral Grant's face appeared on the screen, she looked tired. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and she had the kind of eyes that had seen too much combat. "This is Admiral Grant. Who am I speaking to?" "My name is Commander Velroth of the Drakan Empire. I am contacting you to propose a military alliance." Grant's expression didn't change. "The Drakan Empire has ignored every attempt at communication humanity has made for the last 50 years. Why would you want an alliance now?" "Because we face a common enemy. The Shkal swarm has returned. They are destroying our colonies and will soon reach yours." "I've heard reports of something attacking Drakan territory," Grant said. "My analysts weren't sure what to make of it." "May I speak, Admiral?" Daniel said, stepping into view of the screen. Grant's eyes widened. "Daniel Pierce? We've had you listed as missing for 6 weeks. Where have you been?" "It's a long story, but I'm on the Drakan homeworld. And what Commander Velroth is saying is true. The swarm is real, and it's coming. We need to work together, or we all die. Grant was quiet for a moment, studying them both. I'll need proof. Data, fleet positions, tactical analysis of this swarm, and I'll need authorization from civilian command. We can provide the data, Velroth said. As for your authorization, you may tell your leaders this. The Drakon Empire is offering full military cooperation, technology sharing, and combined fleet operations. For the first time in our history, we are asking for help. That's a hell of an offer, Grant said. What's the catch? No catch, Daniel said. Just survival. Grant nodded slowly. Send me everything you have. I'll present it to the Joint Chiefs. But I can't promise they'll agree. That's all we ask, Velroth said. The transmission ended. Velroth looked at Daniel. Now we wait. The wait lasted 3 days. During that time, the swarm pushed deeper into Draken territory. Reports came in of 2 more colonies falling. The council grew more anxious. Therix used the delay to argue against the alliance, saying it proved humans couldn't be trusted. Daniel continued his training with renewed intensity. Drakmir pushed him harder than ever, teaching him not just to channel fire, but to fight with it. How to turn flame into a shield. How to burn through ship hull. How to sense enemies by their heat signature. You are improving, Drakmir admitted one day after Daniel managed to hold a flame barrier for 3 full minutes. For a human. Still not good enough to survive real combat, but better. I'll take that as high praise, Daniel said, breathing hard. Drakmir almost smiled. Do not let it go to your head. On the 3rd night, Admiral Grant called back. Her face on the screen looked grim but determined. I briefed the Joint Chiefs, she said. They authorized me to negotiate terms. But they want something in return for committing our forces. Name it, Velroth said. Technology transfer. Real cooperation. Not token gestures. Medical knowledge. Engineering specifications. Jump drive improvements. If we're fighting together, we share everything. Daniel could see Velroth tense. Sharing technology meant admitting humans could understand it, could use it. It meant treating them as equals. Agreed, Velroth said, and Daniel knew how much that word cost him. Send us your fleet positions. We will coordinate a combined strategy. Already done. I'm bringing 3 carrier groups, 200 ships total. When and where do you need us? The Thandros Gate, Velroth said, pulling up a star map. It's a gravity choke point between Draken space and the next sector. If we can hold the swarm there, we can buy time for Pierce to reach the forge. Grant studied the map. That's deep in contested territory. We'll take losses. We all will, Velroth said. But if we succeed, we save both our peoples. Then I guess we're doing this. Grant looked directly at Daniel. Pierce, try not to die. You've already got enough paperwork waiting back home. Daniel laughed despite everything. I'll do my best, Admiral. The preparations took a week. Human ships began arriving at designated coordinates, joining with Drakon forces. The 2 fleets were vastly different. Human vessels were smaller, built for speed and maneuverability. Draken ships were massive, designed to overpower through sheer force. Getting them to work together was a nightmare. The first joint tactical meeting dissolved into arguments about basic terms. Human officers wanted detailed attack plans. Draken commanders preferred to adapt in real time. Human ships relied on electronic warfare. Draken vessels used organic targeting systems that couldn't be jammed. Daniel found himself mediating between 2 completely different military cultures. He translated not just words but concepts, helping each side understand how the other thought. They think we're reckless, Admiral Grant said after one particularly rough meeting. They think you're rigid, Daniel replied. But you're both wrong. Humans are adaptable, not reckless. Draken are confident, not rigid. You just express it differently. Slowly, painfully, the combined fleet began to function. Human pilots learned to fly in formation with Draken wings. Draken gunners learned to coordinate fire with human missile salvos. It wasn't perfect, but it was working. Lysizera visited Daniel the night before the fleet deployed. She looked small and worried. "You're leaving tomorrow," she said. "I am. Will you come back?" Daniel knelt down so they were eye level. "I'm going to try really hard to come back." She threw her arms around his neck. "You have to. You promised to teach me more about Earth, about your home. Then I definitely have to survive," Daniel said, hugging her back. "Can't break a promise to you." Velroth came to find him later. The commander wore full battle armor, ready for deployment. "I will be commanding the Drakon fleet at Thandros Gate. You will travel with a strike team to Kaldris." "Who's on the team?" Daniel asked. "Drakmir will lead. 2 of our best warriors, plus 2 human marines that Admiral Grant insisted on sending. She said you would need people who think like you." Daniel felt oddly touched. That was good of her. "The human admiral is proving to be capable," Velroth admitted. "I did not expect this." "Maybe that's the problem," Daniel said. "Nobody expected any of this. The Drakon didn't expect humans to be useful. Humans didn't expect Drakon to ask for help. I didn't expect to bond with ancient magic. But here we are." "Indeed." Velroth put a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "The Forge will test you in ways the Trial of Embers cannot match. It will demand everything you have and more." "Are you ready?" "No," Daniel said. "But I'm going anyway." The fleet deployed at dawn. Daniel stood on the bridge of a Drakon strike ship, watching the combined armada move out. Human carriers flanked by Drakon battleships, destroyer squadrons mixed with Drakon fire ships. It was beautiful and terrifying. The human marines Grant had sent were named Kevin Harris and Linda Chen. Harris was built like a tank, with kind eyes and hands that looked like they could crush steel. Chen was smaller but moved like a coiled spring, always ready. "So you're the guy who can play with fire," Harris said when they met. "Something like that," Daniel replied. "Cool. I brought marshmallows." Harris grinned. Chen rolled her eyes. "Ignore him. He thinks he's funny." "I am funny," Harris protested. Drakmir glared at all of them. "This is a combat mission, not a social gathering. Pierce, these are your people?" "They're good soldiers," Daniel said, though he'd only known them for 5 minutes. "They had better be." "We go through the Swarm's fleet, reach Kaldris, and activate the Forge. If any of you fail, billions die." "No pressure then," Chen muttered. The journey to Thandros Gate took 18 hours. Daniel spent the time meditating like Kael'van had taught him, feeling the fire inside, keeping it controlled. He would need every ounce of power for what came next. When they reached the gate, the swarm was waiting. Daniel saw them on the tactical display first. Thousands of contacts. Maybe tens of thousands. Swarm ships looked nothing like human or Drakon vessels. They were organic, twisted things that seemed to shift and writhe even in the vacuum of space. They filled the space around the gate like a plague. "All ships. This is Admiral Grant. Today we fight not as Drakon or human, but as allies against extinction. Give them hell. All wings. This is Commander Velroth. For the Empire, for the future. Attack." The combined fleet surged forward. Space lit up with weapons fire. Human missiles streaked toward swarm ships, while Drakon plasma cannons tore through organic hull. The swarm fired back with weapons that looked like they were alive. Tendrils of dark energy that ate through shields. The strike ship Daniel was on dove through the chaos, moving fast, staying small. Drakmir piloted with absolute precision, threading between explosions and weapons fire. On the screens, Daniel watched ships die on both sides. Human destroyers breaking apart. Drakon cruisers consumed by swarm weapons. "Stay focused," Drakmir barked. "We are not part of the main battle. Our target is Kaldris." The moon appeared ahead, gray and dead, covered in ancient structures. But between the strike ship and the moon were swarm vessels, forming a barrier. "Hold on," Drakmir said. He pushed the ship into a dive that made Daniel's stomach flip. Weapons fire screamed past them. The hull shook from near misses. A swarm fighter latched onto their hull. Daniel felt its heat signature. Alien and wrong. Without thinking, he channeled fire through the ship's hull. The swarm fighter shrieked and let go. Burning. Useful, Drakmir admitted. Do that again if you need to. They broke through the swarm line and dropped toward Caldris. The moon's surface rushed up at them. Ancient temples and structures covered the landscape, built by Drakon from a time before history. The strike ship landed hard. They were 50 miles from the forge's location, and the route was hostile. Move out, Drakmir ordered. Pierce, stay in the center. Harris, Chen, cover the rear. We run, and we do not stop. They ran, across ancient stone, through dead cities. Swarm hunters dropped from the sky, seeking them. Drakmir's warriors cut them down with weapons that burned with fire. Harris used a heavy rifle that sounded like thunder. Chen moved like a shadow, her blade finding targets before they knew she was there. Daniel ran with fire building in his chest, ready to defend, ready to protect. The eternal forge waited ahead. And with it, the fate of two species. The swarm hunters were everywhere. They moved through the ruins of Caldris. Like predators who had evolved for nothing but killing, each one was the size of a small car, covered in black carapace that seemed to drink in light. They had too many limbs and too many eyes, and they screamed when they attacked. Drakmir cut down the first three before Daniel even saw them coming. The Drakon weapons master moved with brutal efficiency, his blade burning with fire that left scorched trails through the air. The two Draken warriors with him, Kesistal and Morvek, fought with the same deadly grace. Harris fired his heavy rifle in controlled bursts, each shot slamming into a hunter with enough force to shatter carapace. Chen was faster, smaller, dancing between enemies with her blade finding weak points Daniel didn't even know existed. Pierce, keep moving, Drakmir shouted. We clear the path. You reach the forge. Daniel ran. The fire inside him wanted to fight, wanted to burst out and consume everything hostile. But Kael'van's training held. Control was everything. He needed to save his strength for what came next. A hunter dropped from above, directly at him. Daniel raised his hands without thinking, and fire exploded from his palms. The hunter shrieked and fell away, burning. The smell was terrible, like burning plastic mixed with rotting meat. Good, Drakmir called back. But do not waste energy. The forge will demand everything you have. They ran for 3 miles across ancient stone. The structures around them were older than human civilization, built when the Drakon were young. Temples dedicated to fire, training grounds for warriors long dead, libraries carved into living rock, all of it abandoned, all of it silent, except for the sounds of combat. More hunters came. They poured from the ruins like insects. The team fought their way through, leaving burning corpses in their wake. Kesistal took a wound to the shoulder but kept fighting. Harris's armor was scored with acid from a hunter's blood. Chen moved through the chaos like she had been born for this. The forge temple appeared ahead, rising from the center of an ancient plaza. It was massive, carved from black stone that seemed to glow from within. Flames burned in bowls along the entrance, still lit after 10,000 years. There, Drakmir said. Final push. Do not stop for anything. They ran across the plaza. The hunters seemed to sense where they were going because they came in force. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. They dropped from the sky and emerged from the ground and poured from every ruined building. The Draken warriors formed a line. Go, Kestal shouted at Daniel. We hold here. You complete the mission. I can help you fight, Daniel said. No, Drakmir said firmly. Your job is the forge. Ours is to get you there. Do not make our sacrifice meaningless. Daniel looked at them. These warriors who had trained him and doubted him, and eventually accepted him. He nodded once and ran for the temple entrance. Harris and Chen came with him. We're not leaving you alone, Chen said. Damn right, Harris agreed, firing backward as they ran. You die. This whole thing was for nothing. They reached the temple entrance. Behind them, the sounds of combat intensified. Drakmir and his warriors fought like the legends they were. But there were so many hunters, too many. Inside the temple, darkness waited. The entrance hall was vast, lit only by flames that burned without fuel in bowls along the walls. Symbols covered every surface, the same symbols that marked Daniel's arms. They seemed to glow brighter as he approached. Footsteps echoed ahead. Daniel's fire sense flared a warning. Someone else was here. Tharix stepped from the shadows. The Drakon Lord wore armor that gleamed like fresh blood, and he carried a blade that burned with black fire. Behind him stood a dozen warriors in similar armor. "I knew you would come here," Tharix said. "Did you think I would allow a human to defile our most sacred place?" "Lord Tharix," Daniel said, forcing himself to stay calm. The council approved this. The alliance was agreed. The council is weak. They have forgotten what it means to be Draken. They welcome humans as equals when you are barely worth noticing. Tharix's eyes burned with fury. "I will not allow this insult to stand." Harris and Chen raised their weapons. Tharix's warriors moved forward, blocking the path deeper into the temple. "You can't stop this," Daniel said. "The Forge is the only way to defeat the Swarm. You know that. I know that our people survived for 10,000 years without human help. We will survive now." Tharix pointed his blade at Daniel. "Leave this place. Or die here." Daniel felt the fire rising in his chest. Anger mixed with something deeper, disappointment. "I saved a child. That's all I did. And because of that, I'm here trying to save both our species. Why can't you see that? I see a human pretending to be something he can never be," Tharix said. "The Flameheart bond was sacred. You corrupt it with your presence. The bond doesn't care about your pride." Daniel shot back. "It cares about courage. About protecting people who need protecting. Maybe that's why it chose me instead of you." Tharix's face twisted with rage. "Kill them," his warriors charged. Harris and Chen opened fire. The temple erupted with the sound of combat. Energy weapons scorched ancient stone. Blades clashed. Soldiers on both sides fell. Daniel pushed deeper into the temple, leaving Harris and Chen to fight. He hated abandoning them. But they were right. His job was the Forge. Everything else was secondary. He ran through corridors that seemed to shift and change. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, guiding him. The fire in his chest pulled him forward, like it knew where to go. A roar behind him. Daniel turned to see Tharix pursuing alone. His warriors left behind to fight. The Drakon Lord moved with terrifying speed. "You cannot escape me, human." Daniel ran faster. The corridor opened into a vast chamber. In the center, rising from the floor like a mountain of crystal and light, was the Eternal Forge. It pulsed with power that made Daniel's bones ache. Symbols covered its surface, thousands of them, all glowing with different colors. Footsteps behind him. Daniel turned as Tharix entered the chamber. The Lord's blade burned with black fire that seemed to drink in light. "Last chance," Tharix said. "Leave now." "I can't do that," Daniel said. Tharix attacked. He moved faster than anything Daniel had ever seen. His blade a streak of darkness. Daniel barely dodged, rolling aside as the weapon carved a line of scorched stone where he had stood. Daniel raised his hands and fire burst from his palms. Tharix cut through it with his blade, the black fire consuming the orange flames. He pressed the attack, each strike faster than the last. Daniel wasn't a warrior. He had been training for weeks, not decades. Against a Drakon Lord with centuries of combat experience, he should have died in seconds, but the fire inside him responded to his need. It moved his body faster than thought. It guided his hands to block attacks he couldn't see coming. It was like fighting with instinct older than himself. He channeled fire into his fists and met Tharix's blade with burning hands. Metal screamed against fire. The impact threw both of them backward. "Impossible," Tharix hissed. "No human should be this strong." "Maybe that's your problem," Daniel said, breathing hard. "You keep thinking about what species we are, instead of who we are." Tharix roared and charged again. This time Daniel didn't dodge. He stepped forward and caught the blade with both hands. fire wrapping around the metal. The black fire and orange fire fought for dominance, neither giving ground. "You fight for pride," Daniel said, forcing the blade aside. "I fight for survival. For Lysizara. For every person, human and Drakon, counting on me. That's the difference." He released the blade and channeled all the fire he could into one strike. His fist connected with Tharix's chest. The impact sent the Drakon Lord flying backward to crash into the wall. Tharix struggled to rise, his armor cracked, his breath labored. "This changes nothing. Even if you reach the forge, you will die. Activating it. The power required will consume you." "Maybe," Daniel said, "but at least I'll die trying to save people instead of trying to stop them from being saved." He turned his back on Tharix and walked toward the forge. Each step felt heavier. The power radiating from the crystal formation pressed against him like a physical weight. Tharix's voice followed him. "You are a fool, human. A fool who will die for people who will never appreciate what you sacrifice." Daniel reached the forge and placed his hands on the crystal. It was warm, alive somehow. The symbols on his arms blazed to life, connecting with the symbols on the forge. He felt the power waiting. Vast and terrible and hungry. "Maybe," Daniel said quietly. "But I'd rather be a fool who tried than a lord who stood by and let everyone die." He opened himself to the forge. The power rushed in. It was like being struck by lightning, except the lightning came from inside and burned outward. Daniel's entire body became fire. The symbols on his arms spread across his skin until he was covered in glowing marks. The fire in his chest exploded, consuming everything he was. Through the connection, Daniel felt the forge network awakening. Conduits that stretched across star systems, nodes on dead worlds and forgotten stations. All of it coming alive, all of it connecting through him. The pain was beyond anything he had imagined. His body couldn't handle this much power. He could feel himself burning away, pieces of his being consumed by the fire. But he held on. He pushed the power outward, into the network, toward the systems where the swarm waited. Purging fire erupted across 3 star systems simultaneously. On ships and stations light years away, people watched as orange flames appeared in space itself. The flames didn't burn randomly. They sought out swarm corruption, swarm vessels, swarm influence. Everywhere the fire touched, the swarm died. At Thandros Gate, Admiral Grant watched her tactical display light up with alerts. "What the hell is that?" "The forge," Velroth said, his voice full of awe. "Pierce has activated the forge." Swarm ships across the battlefield began to burn. Their organic hulls couldn't resist the ancient fire. They twisted and shrieked and died. The corruption that held their fleet together broke apart. Ships that had moved with terrifying coordination suddenly became individuals, confused, vulnerable. "All ships, press the attack," Grant ordered. While they're disrupted, the combined fleet surged forward. Human missiles and Drakon plasma fire tore through the breaking swarm formation. What had been a desperate defensive action became a rout. In the forge chamber, Daniel screamed. He couldn't hold this much longer. His body was failing. Burning from the inside, he could feel parts of himself disappearing, consumed by the power flowing through him. Then small arms wrapped around him. Daniel's eyes, burning with fire, saw Lysizara. The child had somehow made it to Caldris, to the temple, to him. Tears ran down her silver scales. "Please don't die," she sobbed. "Please." Behind her, Kael'van stood with his hands raised. The old priest was channeling power of his own. Ancient Drakon magic trying to contain the overflow from the forge. "You must release it," Kael'van shouted over the roar of power. "Let the forge finish alone. You have done enough. If I let go now, the purge won't complete." Daniel forced out through burning lips. "The swarm will recover. Then you will die," Kael'van said. Daniel looked down at Lysizara, the little girl who he had saved from a crashed pod, who had believed in him when everyone else doubted, who called his fire kind. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Then he pushed one final surge of power into the forge. The chamber exploded with light. Fire erupted in every direction. Thorax, still trying to rise from where he had fallen, screamed as the flames washed over him. But these flames didn't burn with destruction. They burned with purification. When the light faded, Daniel collapsed. The connection to the forge severed. The symbols on his skin faded to black scars. He couldn't feel the fire in his chest anymore. Couldn't feel much of anything. Lissazara was crying, her small hands on his face. "Wake up. Please wake up." Kael'van knelt beside him, checking for signs of life. "He lives." "Barely. We must get him to medical care immediately." Thorax, his armor scorched but intact, stood slowly. The Lord looked at Daniel's broken form, at the child crying over him, at the forge now dimming as its work completed. Something in his expression changed. "I was wrong," Theric said quietly. "About humans. About him. About everything. About him." 3 weeks later, Daniel woke in a medical facility that smelled like flowers and burned stone. His body felt wrong, like someone had taken him apart and put him back together with missing pieces. Lissazara sat beside the bed, her head resting on her arms, asleep. When Daniel moved, she woke instantly. Her gold eyes went wide. "You're awake," she said, then shouted louder. "He's awake! Father, Kael'van, he's awake!" They came quickly. Velroth still in battle armor, showing new scars. Kael'van looking exhausted but relieved. Behind them, Admiral Grant appeared, somehow looking more tired than Velroth. "You scared the hell out of us, Pierce," Grant said. 2 weeks in a coma. The doctors weren't sure you'd wake up." "Did it work?" Daniel asked, his voice rough. "The forge?" "It worked," Velroth said. "The swarm fleet broke. We drove them back through the gate. Combined casualties were heavy. But we won. Harris and Chen? Both alive. Chen took a blade wound, but she'll recover. Harris has a new scar he won't stop talking about." Daniel tried to sit up and failed. His body didn't have the strength. "What's wrong with me?" Kael'van moved closer. "The forge took much from you. The fire in your chest still burns, but dimmer than before. The bond remains, but changed. You will need to relearn much of what you knew." "Can I still use fire?" "Yes, but it will be harder." "The cost was severe, Daniel Pierce. You gave much of yourself to save others." "Worth it," Daniel said. Lissazara climbed onto the bed and hugged him carefully. "You promised to come back. You kept your promise." Over the next days, Daniel learned what had happened while he slept. The combined fleet had pursued the swarm through 2 more systems before the aliens retreated beyond known space. The cooperation between human and Drakan forces had been so successful that both sides agreed to make the alliance permanent. Technology sharing had begun. Human engineers studying Drakan power systems. Drakan scientists examining human adaptive algorithms. Cultural exchange programs were being established. Trade routes opened. Theric had resigned from the council, but not in disgrace. He had given a speech acknowledging his error, praising human courage, and calling for unity between species. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a start. 2 months after waking, Daniel was finally cleared to travel. The Draken wanted him to stay, to continue training, to be a symbol of the Alliance. But Daniel needed to go home, to see Earth, to process everything that had happened. Lissazara cried when he told her. "But you'll come back?" "I will," Daniel promised. "This isn't goodbye. Just see you later." "Promise?" "I promise." Velroth arranged for a ship to take him back to human space. Before he left, the council held a ceremony. They formally recognized him as Flameheart, the first in 10,000 years. They gave him armor crafted specifically for a human frame, marked with the symbols of fire. They gave him a blade forged from star metal that would burn when he called fire to it. Kael'van gave him something more personal, a small crystal that pulsed with gentle warmth. A piece of the forge, the old priest said. So you never forget what you accomplished. What you sacrificed. I don't think I could forget even if I wanted to, Daniel said. Good. Because this is not over. The swarm was pushed back, not destroyed. They will return someday. And when they do, you may be called again. Then I'll be ready. The ship ride back to Earth took a week. Daniel spent it learning to use fire again. It was harder now, like the connection had been damaged. But it was still there. Still warm. Still his. When Earth appeared in the viewport, Daniel felt emotions he couldn't name. Relief. Joy. Sadness. He had left as a simple cargo hauler. He was returning as something else entirely. Admiral Grant met him at the station. Welcome home, Pierce. You've got about 1,000 interviews waiting. Every news service in human space wants to talk to the man who saved the galaxy. I didn't save it alone, Daniel said. No, but you're the most photogenic. Grant smiled slightly. Seriously, though, what you did matters. You showed both our species that we're better together. That's going to change everything. Daniel looked out at Earth, at the blue and white marble hanging in space. Somewhere down there was the apartment he had left 6 months ago. The life he had lived before a child fell from the sky. He could never go back to that life. The fire inside him, even diminished, would never let him be just a cargo hauler again. But maybe that was okay. Maybe some changes were worth the cost. What now? Grant asked. Daniel thought about Lysizara and her gold eyes. About Velroth's grudging respect. About Cale Vaughn's teachings. About Drakmir's brutal training. About two species learning to see each other as more than strangers. Now I rest, he said. Heal. Get strong again. And when they need me, I go back. Think they'll need you? Daniel touched the scars on his arms where the symbols had burned. The swarm isn't gone. Just pushed back. They'll return. When they do, someone needs to stand between them and the people who can't protect themselves. And that someone is you? It has to be. Daniel smiled tiredly. I'm the guy who lifts fallen children to safety. Even when those children are entire species. Even when it nearly kills me. It's what the fire chose me for. Grant nodded slowly. Then rest well, Flameheart. We'll all need you ready when the time comes. Daniel left the station and took a transport down to Earth. The sky was blue. The air smelled like home. And for the first time in months, he felt the fire in his chest settle. Not gone, never gone, just resting, waiting for the day it would be needed again. In the Dracan Empire, Lysizara stood in her father's study, looking at the stars. Velroth put a hand on her shoulder. He will return, Velroth said. When we need him most, Daniel Pierce will return. I know, Lysara said. She touched the window, as if reaching across the distance between worlds. He promised, and people with kind fire don't break promises. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the swarm regrouped. They had been beaten, burned, driven back. But they were patient. They had waited millennia before. They could wait millennia more. And when they returned, they would remember the fire that had scorched them. They would remember the Flameheart. The war was not over. It had only just begun. But for now, in this moment, there was peace. There was unity. There was hope. And somewhere, burning quietly in the chest of a former cargo hauler who had lifted a fallen child to safety, ancient fire waited to awaken once more.